On Scroll Therapy, let's talk about the differences that I've seen between UK and US therapists as a therapist. So I've been in London for a little over 7 weeks now, and I've been seeing a therapist just as long. Now, the main difference that I see between how I do therapy and how she does therapy is that she has a very deep focus on our therapeutic relationship and bringing that into the room. Now, a healthy therapeutic relationship, building rapport, building trust, building understanding, genuine empathy, regard, all of those are the cornerstones of the foundation of therapy. All of those are a necessity to feel with your therapist. But in my sessions, I don't think that I have ever said, as she has said to me, perhaps you don't feel comfortable telling me because you don't trust me. Or perhaps you don't feel like you can access the emotions because you don't know me that well. I have done therapy since, oh my God, I think I was like 15 when I started. And I don't know if I've just been very lucky to have always had great practitioners, or I just have like implicitly trusted them. But I never actually considered the idea that I would not feel comfortable sharing something to my therapist. Now, that's me in my personal life. In my professional life, obviously there are many things that clients do not feel comfortable sharing until they have worked with me for a while. And that's a very natural thing when it comes to therapy. You need to build trust with your therapist. You need to see how they respond to certain situations to judge if you feel comfortable exploring something. But it just struck me as very interesting. Yesterday, we were talking about my POTS journey. And she told me, she was like, you know, you talk a lot about your experience, but you never talk about your feelings. And she's not wrong. She got me there. Like, she's not wrong. I very rarely talk about the feelings behind POTS. And it's not because I'm afraid of talking about them. It is because the pain and the grief is so deep and so acute that it will mess me up for the rest of the day. And I just found it very interesting that her next observation was, perhaps you don't feel comfortable talking about your feelings because you don't feel comfortable talking about it with me. Whereas if I was the practitioner, I would have said something like, perhaps you don't feel comfortable talking about it because it was such a traumatic experience that you are having difficulty processing it right now. And it's just this very subtle thing where I don't dislike it. I just find it very interesting that the therapeutic relationship is at the forefront of every session here. Whereas the way that I was taught to do therapy, well, yes, the therapeutic relationship is pivotal. The way that I was taught to do therapy was to always kind of turn it back towards the client to allow them to gain insight into themselves. So to ask questions as to like, well, how are you doing right now? How do you feel sitting in this room? How do you feel talking about something that's really challenging to talk about? I just would not jump to how do you feel talking about something that's really challenging to talk about with me, unless, and this is the huge caveat, unless I noticed that the client was having difficulty talking about something, sharing it with me, perhaps not being their like normal version of self, and then I would address it. Then I would say like, hey, I noticed that you're pretty reserved today. Is everything okay? Or, hey, like, did I misstep? Did I read the situation wrong? Is there something that I said that has not landed well? It's just a very different way of handling things. My UK therapist is very much like, we are in this together. I was taught like, you're here, I'm with you, but this is your experience that I happen to be sharing in, or I happen to have like a brief moment into. And perhaps our relationship is not the most important thing that comes out of a therapy session. It's just very interesting. I don't think that there's a right or wrong way to do it, and there are certainly many pros and cons. I found it fascinating that I was wondering about my relationship with my brand new therapist when I was also trying to sit with the sensation of I always feel fear and sadness and grief on my own when talking about a really heavy traumatic time in my life.